The whiskey glass hit the bar with a crack that made Olivia Eckhart flinch, and she knew without looking up that someone was staring at her face again. The saloon in North Platte, Nebraska had gone quiet except for the tinkling piano in the corner, and she could feel every pair of eyes on the constellation of freckles that covered her cheeks, her nose, her forehead, spreading down her neck like spilled coffee beans across a white tablecloth. It was August of 1878, and she had lived 22 years bearing those marks like a curse she could not wash away. "Get back in the kitchen," Martha Hines hissed, the saloon owner's wife appearing at Olivia's elbow with a grip tight enough to bruise. "You are scaring away the customers with that spotted face of yours." Olivia gathered the tray of empty glasses, her hands trembling despite her best efforts to stay composed. This was the third job she had lost in as many months, and North Platte was not exactly overflowing with opportunities for a woman with no family and a face that made people whisper about devil's marks and bad omens. Her mother had died bringing her into this world, and her father had looked at her freckled infant face and walked out of the doctor's office, never to return. The orphanage had been her home until she turned 16, and every day since had been a battle to prove she was worth something despite the spots that covered her skin. She pushed through the back door into the summer heat, blinking back tears that she refused to let fall. The alley behind the saloon smelled of horse manure and rotting vegetables, but at least here, nobody stared at her like she was a curiosity in a traveling show. She set down the tray and pressed her palms against the rough wooden wall, trying to catch her breath and figure out what she would do now. Her room at the boarding house was paid through the end of the week, and she had maybe $3 to her name. "That woman has a tongue sharper than a rattlesnake's tooth," a voice said behind her, deep and easy like summer thunder. Olivia spun around to find a cowboy leaning against the opposite wall, tall and lean with dust covering his clothes and a hat pulled low over his face. She could see dark hair curling at his collar and hands that looked like they knew hard work, scarred and calloused even from this distance. "You should not be back here," she said, wrapping her arms around herself. "This is for employees only." "Well, I reckon I would not want to be in there anyway if that is how they treat their people." He pushed off from the wall and stepped closer, and Olivia instinctively turned her face away, letting her hair fall forward to hide the freckles. She had learned that trick early. "Name's Emmett Anders. I just rode in from Colorado, looking for work at one of the ranches nearby." "There is the Patterson spread about 5 miles west," Olivia said to the ground. "They are always hiring drovers." "Much obliged." But he did not move away. "What's your name?" "It does not matter." "Sure it does. Everything matters to somebody." She looked up at him then, ready to tell him to leave her alone, and found herself caught by the kindest pair of green eyes she had ever seen. They were the color of new grass after spring rain, and they were looking directly at her face without a trace of disgust or pity. Just looking like she was any other person he might meet on any ordinary day. "Olivia," she heard herself say. "Olivia Eckhart. That is a beautiful name." He smiled, and it transformed his whole face, made him look younger than the 30 years she would have guessed. "Though I have got to say, I have never seen freckles quite like yours before. How many do you reckon you have got?" The question was so unexpected that Olivia just stared at him. Nobody had ever asked her that. They called her spotted, marked, cursed, but they never acknowledged the freckles as something that could be counted or considered or anything other than hideous. "I do not know," she said carefully. "I never counted." "Mind if I try?" "Try what?" "Counting them." He said it like it was the most natural thing in the world, like he was asking permission to borrow a book or share a bench. "I have always been good with numbers, and I would wager there is a story in every single one of those freckles. Olivia felt her face grow hot, and she knew the freckles would be standing out even more now against her flushed skin. "You are making fun of me." "No, madam, I surely am not." Emmett took off his hat and held it against his chest, and she could see he was serious. "I think they are remarkable. Like someone took a paintbrush dipped in gold dust and decorated your face special. Makes you look like no other woman I have ever seen, and I have been from here to California and back again." "People say they are ugly," Olivia whispered. "They say I am marked by the devil." "Then people are damn fools." He said it with such conviction that Olivia felt something crack open inside her chest, some hard shell she had built up over 22 years of shame and rejection. "The only mark I see is beauty." The back door of the saloon slammed open, and Martha Hines stood there with her hands on her wide hips, her face red with anger. "Olivia Eckhart, you are fired. I will not have you entertaining men in the alley like some common prostitute. Get your things and get out." "She was not doing anything wrong," Emmett said, but Martha had already disappeared back inside, the door banging shut behind her. Olivia closed her eyes and felt the last threads of her composure start to unravel. No job meant no money, meant no room, meant sleeping in the streets or worse. North Platte was not kind to women with nowhere to go. "Hey now," Emmett said softly. "Look at me, Olivia." She forced herself to open her eyes to meet that steady green gaze. "You know anything about ranching, cooking for ranch hands, keeping house?" "I can cook," she said, "and clean. I grew up in an orphanage where we did all our own work." "The Patterson spread," Emmett said slowly, turning his hat in his hands. "When I rode past this morning, I saw a sign saying they needed a cook. The old one ran off with a traveling preacher, near as I could tell from the gossip at the general store. What do you say we ride out there together, see if we can both get ourselves hired? You do not even know me. I know you have been treated poorly for something that is not your fault. I know you are brave enough to keep your head up when people are cruel, and I know I would like to get to know you better if you will let me." He offered his hand. "What do you say?" Olivia looked at that outstretched hand, rough and honest, and made a decision that felt like stepping off a cliff. She put her hand in his. The ride out to the Patterson ranch took an hour on the back of Emmett's horse, a steady roan gelding named Copper. Olivia sat behind him, trying not to notice how solid he felt, or how he smelled like leather and sage, and something warm she could not name. He talked the whole way, pointing out landmarks and telling her stories about his travels, never once asking her to talk if she did not want to. It was the most comfortable she had been around another person in as long as she could remember. The ranch house was a sprawling wooden structure with a wide porch and flower boxes under the windows, surprising touches of gentleness in the harsh prairie landscape. A woman came out to meet them as they rode up, wiping her hands on her apron. She was maybe 50, with gray streaking through her brown hair and a face that looked tired but kind. "Help you folks," she called. Emmett dismounted and then helped Olivia down, his hands steady at her waist. "Yes, madam. I am Emmett Anders, and this is Miss Olivia Eckhart. We heard you might be needing a cook and a drover." The woman's eyes went to Olivia's face, and Olivia braced herself for the familiar look of disgust. But the woman just studied her for a moment and then nodded. "I am Catherine Patterson. My husband runs this ranch. And yes, I am desperately in need of a cook. Can you handle feeding 20 ranch hands 3 meals a day?" "Yes, madam," Olivia said, finding her voice. "I can cook just about anything, and I am not afraid of hard work." "What about you?" Catherine turned to Emmett. "Can you sit a horse through a long day? Handle cattle? Take orders from the foreman?" "I have been working ranches since I was 14, madam. Drove cattle from Texas to Kansas 6 times. I am good with horses and better with cattle, and I do not cause trouble." Catherine looked between them, something calculating in her expression. "You two married?" "No, madam," they said together. "Courting." There was a pause. Then Emmett said, "Working on it." Olivia felt her face flush again, but she did not contradict him. "Well, I run a respectable household here," Catherine said. "Miss Eckhart, you will have a room in the main house near the kitchen. Emmett, you will bunk with the other ranch hands. I will not have any impropriety under my roof. Understood?" "Yes, madam," they both said. "Good. You can start tomorrow. Olivia, I will show you the kitchen and your room. Emmett, head over to the bunkhouse and talk to Frank Carson. He is the foreman. He will get you settled." As Emmett turned to leave, he caught Olivia's eye and smiled that transforming smile again. "See you at supper, Miss Eckhart." "See you then, Mr. Anders." The kitchen was enormous, with a cast-iron stove that looked like it could cook for an army and more pots and pans than Olivia had ever seen in one place. Catherine showed her around, explaining the routine and the preferences of the ranch hands, and not once did she mention Olivia's freckles or look at her with anything other than businesslike efficiency. "I will be honest with you," Catherine said as they finished the tour. "The last 3 cooks I hired left because the men made them uncomfortable. My husband tries to keep order, but ranch hands can be rough. You seem like you have got a backbone, though, am I right?" "Yes, madam," Olivia said. "I have dealt with worse than rough men." "Good. Because I need someone who will stay. I am tired of teaching new girls every few months." Catherine paused at the door to the small bedroom off the kitchen. "And Olivia, those men out there might say things about your face. You let me know if they do, and I will handle it. Nobody deserves to be mocked for how God made them." Olivia felt her throat tighten. "Thank you, Mrs. Patterson." That first supper was the hardest thing Olivia had ever done. She cooked stew and biscuits and apple pie, and when the ranch hands started filing in, she kept her head down and her hands busy. She heard the whispers, the questions about the new cook, and then the sudden silence when they saw her face. But before anyone could say anything cruel, she heard Emmett's voice cut through the quiet. "Any of you gentlemen care to comment on Miss Eckhart's fine cooking? Because I am smelling the best food I have had in months, and I am not about to let anyone ruin my appetite with fool talk." There was a murmur of agreement, and Frank Carson, a grizzled man with a beard down to his chest, said, "Anders is right. We judge the cook by the food, not the face. Now everyone sit down and eat before it gets cold." Olivia served the meal with shaking hands, but nobody said a word against her. And when Emmett caught her eye across the room and mouthed, "Told you," she felt something like hope bloom in her chest. The days fell into a rhythm. Olivia woke before dawn to start breakfast, cooked 3 meals a day for 20 hungry men, and cleaned the kitchen until everything shone. It was exhausting work, but it was honest and she was good at it. The ranch hands warmed to her after the first week, won over by her cooking and her quiet competence. They stopped staring at her freckles and started asking for second helpings of her cornbread. And every evening, after the supper dishes were done, Emmett would find some excuse to linger in the kitchen. He would help her carry water or chop wood for the stove or just sit at the big table and talk while she worked. He told her about growing up in Missouri with 5 brothers, about learning to ride before he could walk, about the big sky country he had seen and the dreams he had of someday having his own spread. "What about you?" he asked one night about 2 weeks after they arrived. "What do you dream about?" Olivia paused in her sweeping and looked out the window at the stars scattered across the black sky. "I used to dream about having a different face," she said quietly. "But lately I have been dreaming about something else." "What is that?" "A place where people do not care about the freckles. Where I could just be Olivia, and that would be enough." Emmett stood up from the table and crossed to where she stood. "You are in that place right now," he said, "because I do not care about the freckles except to think they are beautiful, and you are more than enough just being Olivia." "You keep saying that," she said, looking up at him, "about them being beautiful, but you have not counted them yet." "Well, I have been waiting for permission. You have it now." Emmett reached up slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently brushed her hair back from her face. His fingers were warm and rough against her skin, and Olivia held her breath as he traced the freckles across her left cheek with the lightest touch. "1, 2, 3, he murmured, moving across her cheekbone. 4, 5, 6, 7. His thumb brushed over her nose. 8, 9, 10. Down to her other cheek. 11, 12, 13. "How many are there?" Olivia whispered. "I do not rightly know yet. Might take me a lifetime to count them all." He was close enough now that she could see gold flecks in his green eyes. "Would you be willing to give me that long?" "Emmett," she said, his name catching in her throat. "I am falling in love with you, Olivia Eckhart. Have been since the moment I saw you in that alley. And I know it has only been 2 weeks, and I know you might think I am crazy, but I have never been more sure of anything in my life." "People will talk," she said, but her hands had come up to rest against his chest. "They will say you could do better than the freckled girl. Let them talk. I am not interested in better because there is not better than you." And then he kissed her, soft and sweet, and Olivia felt every lonely year of her life fall away like dust. She kissed him back, pouring every ounce of longing and hope and desperate affection into it, and when they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. "Emmett Anders," she said, her hands fisted in his shirt. "I am falling in love with you too." His smile could have lit up the whole prairie. They courted properly after that, with Catherine Patterson keeping a stern but benevolent eye on them. Emmett would take Olivia riding on Sunday afternoons, showing her the boundaries of the ranch and teaching her about the land. He brought her wildflowers and told her jokes, and listened to her stories about growing up in the orphanage with an attention that made her feel like every word mattered. And slowly, day by day, he counted her freckles. He would trace them with his fingertips while they sat on the porch in the evening, naming them like constellations. The cluster on her right temple was the Big Dipper. The scatter across her nose was Orion's belt. The line down her neck was the Milky Way. "You are turning me into the night sky," she teased him one evening in late September, the air finally cooling from the summer heat. "You were always the night sky," he said seriously. "I am just learning to read the stars." 3 months after they arrived at the Patterson Ranch, Emmett asked Mr. Patterson for Olivia's hand in marriage. James Patterson was a stern man with ice-blue eyes and a reputation for being fair but hard, and Olivia waited in the kitchen with her heart hammering while Emmett made his case. When they came back, Mr. Patterson looked at her for a long moment. "This true, girl? You want to marry this cowboy?" "Yes, sir," Olivia said, lifting her chin. "I do." "He is a good worker," Mr. Patterson said. "Honest, hard, does not complain. Frank says he is the best hand we have had in years, but he does not own anything. No land, no cattle, just a horse and a saddle. You understand what you are signing up for." "I understand that he is kind and decent and he loves me," Olivia said. "That is worth more than land or cattle." Mr. Patterson's stern face cracked into something that might have been a smile. "Catherine said you had backbone. All right, you have my blessing. We will have the wedding here at the ranch. Catherine will want to plan the whole thing, I suspect." He was right. Catherine threw herself into wedding planning with an enthusiasm that made Olivia dizzy. She insisted on making Olivia a new dress, cream-colored calico with tiny blue flowers, and she invited every ranch family within 20 miles. The wedding would be on the first Saturday in November, she declared, and it would be a celebration to remember. The night before the wedding, Olivia could not sleep. She stood at the window of her little room, looking out at the stars and trying to believe this was really happening. Tomorrow she would marry Emmett Anders. Tomorrow she would become a wife, would belong to someone who chose her not despite her freckles but with full knowledge and love of every single one. There was a soft knock at her door. When she opened it, Catherine stood there in her nightgown with a shawl wrapped around her shoulders. "Could not sleep either," Catherine said. "Mind if I come in?" They sat on the narrow bed together, and Catherine took Olivia's hand. "I wanted to tell you something before tomorrow. When I first met James, I thought he would never look twice at me. I was plain and poor, and he was the son of a wealthy rancher. But he saw something in me that nobody else did. He saw strength and loyalty and love, and he chose me." "You are not plain," Olivia said. "Maybe not to him. But that is the point. The right person sees you the way you are meant to be seen." Catherine squeezed her hand. "Emmett sees you truly, Olivia. Hold on to that. And when the world is cruel, remember that his love is real." "Thank you," Olivia whispered, "for everything. For giving us jobs, for planning this wedding, for being kind when you did not have to be." "We women have to look out for each other," Catherine said. "Lord knows the world does not make it easy for us." The wedding day dawned clear and bright, the November sky a shocking blue against the brown prairie grass. Catherine helped Olivia dress, pinning up her hair and tucking wildflowers into the braids. When Olivia looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. The freckles were still there, scattered across her face like always, but somehow they looked different now. They looked like part of her story instead of a curse. The ceremony took place in front of the ranch house, with the traveling preacher from town officiating, and what seemed like half the county in attendance. Olivia walked out on Mr. Patterson's arm, since he had offered to give her away, and found Emmett waiting for her in his best clothes with his hair slicked back and his eyes bright with love. "Dearly beloved," the preacher began, but Olivia barely heard him. She was too busy looking at Emmett, at the man who had seen her in an alley, and decided to count her freckles instead of turning away in disgust. When it came time for the vows, Emmett took both her hands and spoke in a voice that carried across the assembled crowd. "I, Emmett James Anders, take you, Olivia Rose Eckhart, to be my wife. I promise to count your freckles every single day for the rest of our lives. I promise to love you in the hard times and the easy times. I promise to choose you every morning and every night. And I promise that you will never again feel alone or unwanted, because I want you more than I have ever wanted anything." Olivia's voice shook when she spoke her own vows, but she made it through. "I, Olivia Rose Eckhart, take you, Emmett James Anders, to be my husband. I promise to believe you when you say I am beautiful. I promise to stand beside you in all the adventures to come. I promise to love you with everything I have. And I promise that you will always have a home with me, no matter where we go." "By the power vested in me," the preacher said, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Emmett kissed her like it was the first time and the 1,000th time all at once, and the crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Olivia kissed him back and tasted salt on her lips, realized she was crying, realized she was happy. The celebration lasted long into the night, with dancing and food and toasts to the newlyweds. Frank Carson got drunk and gave a rambling speech about how Emmett was the luckiest man alive, and Catherine cried into her handkerchief, and Mr. Patterson actually smiled more than once. Olivia danced with her new husband under the stars, and when he pulled her close and whispered, "Hello, Mrs. Anders," she thought her heart might burst from happiness. They spent their wedding night in a small cabin on the far edge of the Patterson property, a lined shack that Catherine had cleaned and decorated for them. It was simple and spare, but it felt like a palace to Olivia. Emmett carried her over the threshold and set her down gently, and then he lit the lamp and turned to look at her. "Come here," he said softly. She went to him, and he carefully began removing the pins from her hair, letting the dark waves fall around her shoulders. "I want to count them properly," he said. "Now that you are mine and I am yours. All of them. Every single one." He started at her hairline and worked his way down, counting in a low murmur, occasionally stopping to press a kiss to a particular cluster of freckles. He counted the ones on her forehead, her temples, her cheeks. He counted the bridge of her nose and the tip of her chin. He unbuttoned her dress and counted the freckles on her shoulders, her collarbone, her arms. "How many so far?" she asked breathlessly. "I have lost count," he admitted with a laugh. "I will have to start over. Maybe some things are too infinite to count." "Maybe," he agreed, pulling her close, "but I am going to spend the rest of my life trying." They made love slowly, tenderly, learning each other's bodies like new languages. Emmett whispered her name like a prayer, and Olivia traced the scars on his back and chest, the marks of a hard life lived honestly. When they finally fell asleep tangled together, Olivia felt a peace she had never known before. She had found her place in the world, and it was right here in the arms of this man who loved her freckles. They lived in the lined shack through the winter, with Olivia still cooking at the main house and Emmett still working as a ranch hand. They saved every penny they could, dreaming of the day they could buy their own land. It was a hard winter, with snow that piled up to the windows and temperatures that froze water solid, but they kept each other warm. Emmett would come home from a long day of feeding cattle in the bitter cold, and Olivia would have hot stew waiting. They would eat together and then curl up under every blanket they owned, telling stories and making plans. "I want a ranch of our own someday," Emmett said one night in January, his breath fogging in the cold air of the cabin despite the fire. "Nothing huge, maybe 100 acres, enough for cattle and horses. A real house with glass windows and a kitchen big enough for you to work in without bumping your elbows." "That sounds wonderful," Olivia said, burrowing deeper into his warmth. "But I am happy here too. As long as I am with you, I do not need much else." "You deserve everything," he said fiercely. "You deserve a home that is yours, where nobody can make you feel small or unwanted ever again." "I already have that," she said, kissing his jaw. "I have you." In February, Olivia realized she was pregnant. She told Emmett one evening after supper, nervous about how he would react. They had not planned for a baby so soon, and money was still tight, but Emmett's face lit up like the sun coming over the horizon. He picked her up and spun her around the tiny cabin, laughing like a child. "A baby," he kept saying. "We are going to have a baby. Are you happy?" She asked when he finally set her down. "Happy does not even begin to cover it," he said, his hands cupping her still flat belly. "Olivia, you have made me the richest man in Nebraska." The pregnancy was not easy. Olivia was sick every morning for months, and by summer she was so large she could barely move around the kitchen. But Catherine helped her, taking over some of the heavier work, and Emmett waited on her hand and foot when he was not working. "You are going to be a wonderful mother," he told her one evening in August as they sat on the porch of the lined shack, watching the sun set in streaks of orange and purple. Her belly was huge now, the baby kicking constantly. "How do you know?" she asked. "Because you have so much love in you that went nowhere for so long. Now you finally get to pour it into someone who will love you back the way you deserve." The baby came in early September of 1879, a year almost to the day after Emmett had counted her freckles for the first time. The labor was long and hard, and there were moments when Olivia thought she might die like her own mother had. But Catherine was there with her, and the doctor from town, and after 18 hours of agony, She heard the most beautiful sound in the world, her baby crying. "It is a boy," Catherine said, tears streaming down her face as she cleaned the baby and wrapped him in a blanket. "A beautiful, healthy boy." Emmett came in from where he had been pacing outside, his face white with worry, and Catherine handed him his son. He looked down at the squirming bundle, and Olivia watched him fall in love all over again. "Does he have them?" she asked weakly from the bed. "The freckles?" Emmett examined the baby's tiny face carefully. "Not yet," he said, "but even if he does, they will be beautiful, just like his mother's." They named him Thomas, after Emmett's father, and he was the most perfect thing Olivia had ever seen. He had Emmett's green eyes and Olivia's dark hair, and within a few weeks, sure enough, tiny freckles started appearing across his little nose. "Look," Emmett said one morning, holding the baby up to the light. "He is going to be just like you." "Poor thing," Olivia said, but she was smiling. "Lucky thing," Emmett corrected. "He is going to be remarkable. Life with a baby was exhausting and wonderful." Olivia cut back her hours at the main house, working only breakfast and supper so she could care for Thomas during the day. Emmett picked up extra work whenever he could, determined to keep saving for their own place. The line shack felt smaller with 3 people in it, but it was full of love and laughter. When Thomas was 6 months old, Mr. Patterson called Emmett into his office. Olivia waited anxiously, worried that something was wrong, but when Emmett came back, he was grinning like a fool. "What happened?" she demanded. "Patterson is selling off some of his land," Emmett said, picking her up despite her protests and spinning her around. 80 acres on the north edge of the property, and he is willing to sell it to me for half what it is worth, with payments over 5 years. Said I have been the best hand he has had, and he wants to see us get our start. "Emmett," Olivia breathed. "That is incredible. We are going to have our own ranch, Olivia. It is not much, but it is ours. We can build a house, run some cattle, make a real life." They bought the land in March of 1880, and Emmett spent every spare moment that spring and summer building a house. It was not fancy, just 4 rooms and a porch, but he built it with his own hands, and every nail was a testament to his love for his family. The other ranch hands helped when they could, and by September they were able to move in. Olivia stood in her new kitchen, bigger than the one at the line shack, but not so big she felt lost in it, and cried. She had a home. A real home that was hers, where nobody could tell her to leave or hide her face. Where her son could grow up knowing he was wanted and loved. "Why are you crying?" Emmett asked, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. "Because I am happy," she said, leaning back against him. "Because 5 years ago I was alone and afraid and sleeping in a boarding house, and now I have everything I ever dreamed of." "We have everything," he corrected, "and we are just getting started." He was right. Over the next few years, their ranch grew slowly but steadily. They bought a small herd of cattle, then some chickens, then a milk cow. Emmett proved to be as good a rancher as he was a ranch hand, and their reputation for quality beef spread through the county. It was hard work, dawn to dusk every day, but they did it together. Thomas grew into a bright, energetic little boy with his mother's freckles and his father's easy smile. Olivia taught him his letters while Emmett taught him to ride. On Sundays, they would go into North Platte for church, and Olivia held her head high even when she saw people staring at her face. Let them stare. She had a husband who loved her and a son who thought she was beautiful and a home that was hers. She had nothing to be ashamed of. In the spring of 1883, Olivia gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Catherine after Mrs. Patterson. The little girl had red hair and more freckles than even Olivia, covering her face and arms like cinnamon sugar on toast. "She is going to have a hard time," Olivia said quietly one night, nursing the baby while Emmett sat beside her. People are going to be cruel about the freckles. And we are going to teach her that those people are wrong, Emmett said firmly. We are going to teach her that she is beautiful and valuable and loved, just like I taught you. I am still learning that, Olivia admitted. Then we will learn it together, and we will teach our children, and maybe someday the world will catch up. He leaned over and kissed a cluster of freckles on her shoulder. I counted 17 new ones here. I think they multiply when you are happy. That is not how freckles work, Olivia said, laughing. How would you know? I am the expert here. 2 years later came their third child, another boy they named James after Mr. Patterson, who had become like a father to both of them. He had no freckles at all, just smooth, pale skin and blonde hair that nobody could quite figure out where it came from. Must be from my mother's side, Emmett said, studying the baby in wonder. She was fair as milk. Their house felt full and loud and perfect, exactly what Olivia had dreamed of during all those lonely years. She cooked and cleaned and tended the garden while Emmett ran the ranch, and together they raised their children to be kind and strong and unafraid. The years passed in a blur of hard work and simple joys. Thomas turned into a skilled rider, able to help his father with the cattle by the time he was 10. Catherine was quieter, more thoughtful, but she had her mother's talent for cooking and her father's head for numbers. James was the wild one, always getting into trouble and making them laugh, and through it all, Emmett kept his promise. Every single night before they went to sleep, he would trace Olivia's freckles and tell her she was beautiful. Some nights he would count them, never getting the same number twice, and some nights he would just touch them like reading Braille. But every night, without fail, he made sure she knew she was loved. You know I have more gray hair than brown hair now, Olivia said one night in the summer of 1890. They were 41 and 43, no longer young, their bodies marked by time and work, and more wrinkles than I can count. You are still the most beautiful woman I have ever seen, Emmett said, and he meant it. She could see it in his eyes. Want to know a secret? What? I think you get more freckles every year. I counted 47 new ones just this spring. Emmett Anders, you are a ridiculous man. Olivia Anders, you are the love of my life. Their children grew up and started making their own ways in the world. Thomas married a girl from town, a sweet-tempered blonde named Sarah who loved him desperately. They built a house on the far corner of the ranch land and started their own herd. Catherine, true to her nature, became a teacher at the schoolhouse in North Platte, beloved by her students for her patience and kindness. She never married, saying she was perfectly happy with her books and her students. James went west to Colorado to try his hand at silver mining, writing long letters home about his adventures, and Olivia and Emmett grew old together in the house he had built with his own hands. They had good years and hard years, droughts and blizzards and cattle diseases that nearly ruined them. But they had each other, and they had built something real and lasting. On their 20th anniversary, Emmett took Olivia back to North Platte, back to the alley behind the saloon where they had first met. The saloon was under new ownership now, and the town had grown, but the alley looked much the same. "Why did you bring me here?" Olivia asked. "Because this is where my life really started," Emmett said. "This is where I saw a woman in an alley, looking like she had lost everything, and I knew I had to know her, had to count her freckles and learn her story. I did lose everything that day," Olivia said, "and then I found everything. How many freckles do you think you have now?" "I have no idea. You are the one who keeps counting." "I have counted them thousands of times," Emmett said, taking her hands, "and I have never gotten the same number twice. I think that is because you are not a fixed thing, Olivia. You are always growing, always changing, always becoming more yourself, and I get to watch it happen." "You are going to make me cry," she said. "Good tears, the best tears." They stood in that alley, middle-aged and worn by life, but still holding hands like newlyweds, and Olivia thought about that terrified girl she had been. That girl who thought she was marked and ugly and unlovable. That girl who could not imagine anyone seeing past her freckles to the person underneath. "I wish I could go back and tell her," she said softly. "Tell who?" "The girl I was. I wish I could tell her that someday a cowboy would count her freckles and love them all. That she would have a home and a family and a life so full of love she would barely be able to contain it." "She would not believe you," Emmett said. "No, probably not. But I wish she could know." "She does know," Emmett said, touching her cheek. "She is right here, part of you, and she knows now. She knows she survived. She knows she was worthy of love all along." They went home as the sun was setting, painting the prairie in gold and amber light. Their grandchildren were coming for supper, 5 of them now from Thomas and Sarah, ranging from newborn to 7 years old. The house would be full of noise and chaos, and Olivia would cook too much food and Emmett would tell the children stories about the old days until they fell asleep in his lap. It was a good life. Not perfect, not easy, but good and true and theirs. Years continued to pass, each one bringing its own mixture of joy and sorrow. They lost Mr. Patterson to a heart attack in 1895, and Catherine Patterson followed him just 6 months later, her heart broken by the loss. Olivia wept at their graves, remembering the kindness that had changed her life. Thomas took over running the combined ranches, proving himself every bit his father's son. Emmett's hair went completely gray, then white, and his hands grew gnarled with arthritis. Olivia's freckles faded a bit with age, but Emmett insisted they were still there if you looked close enough. They moved more slowly, worked less, spent more time on their porch watching the sun rise and set over land they had earned through decades of hard work. "You have any regrets?" Olivia asked him one evening in 1898. They were 60, both of them, and feeling every year. "Not a single one," Emmett said. "You?" "I regret all the years I spent hating my freckles," she said. "All that time I wasted thinking I was ugly. You were never ugly. The world was just too blind to see. You saw." "I saw you," he said simply, "and that made all the difference." More grandchildren came, then great-grandchildren. The ranch continued to prosper under Thomas's management. Catherine published a book of poems that made Olivia cry when she read them, recognizing her own story woven through the verses. James struck silver in Colorado and came home wealthy, building a fine house in town, but always coming back to the ranch for Sunday dinners. And through it all, every single night, Emmett counted Olivia's freckles. His fingers were shakier now, his eyes not as sharp, but he never missed a night. It was his ritual, his prayer, his way of saying I love you without words. "I am running out of them," Olivia said one night, looking at her age-spotted hands. She was 73 and her body was failing in small ways that scared her. "The freckles are fading." "They are not fading," Emmett said, 75 and still stubborn. "They are just transforming into age spots, which are even better because they have stories. This one here," he touched her temple, "is from all the times you squinted into the sun watching the children play. This one," her cheekbone, "is from smiling so much your face could not help but mark the joy. You are making that up." "So what if I am? I have been making up stories about your freckles for 35 years. I am not about to stop now." In the spring of 1904, Emmett had a stroke that left him weak and confused. He recovered somewhat, but he was never quite the same. Some days he did not remember where he was or how old he was, but he always remembered Olivia and her freckles. "Let me count them," he would say, his voice slurred but his intention clear. And Olivia would sit still while his trembling fingers traced the familiar patterns across her face, and she would cry silently because she knew time was running out. He died on a Tuesday morning in October, the sky overhead brilliant with fall color. Olivia was holding his hand, and his last words were about her freckles. "So beautiful," he whispered. "Counted them all, every single one." The funeral was huge, with people coming from all over the county to pay their respects to the man who had built a life through honesty and hard work and love. But Olivia barely noticed them. She stood by his grave in her black dress, feeling like half of herself had been buried in that ground. "What am I supposed to do now?" she asked Catherine, her daughter standing strong beside her. "He counted my freckles every night for 36 years. Who is going to count them now?" "You do not need anyone to count them, Mama," Catherine said gently. "He taught you they were beautiful. You know that now in your bones. That gift does not die with him." But it felt like it had. Olivia went home to the house Emmett had built and sat in their bedroom and looked at her freckled face in the mirror and felt completely lost. She was 78 years old, and for the first time since she was 22, she was alone. The days were impossibly long. She cooked for herself but had no appetite. She tended the garden but found no joy in it. Her children and grandchildren came to visit, worried about her, but she just smiled and told them she was fine. She was not fine. She was drowning in grief. One night, about 2 weeks after Emmett died, Olivia stood in front of the mirror and looked at her reflection. Really looked, the way she had not done in years. Her face was wrinkled, her hair white, her body bent with age. But the freckles were still there, faded but visible, scattered across her skin like the memories of all the times Emmett had counted them. And slowly, with shaking fingers, she began to count them herself. 1 on her forehead, 2 on her left temple, 3, 4, 5 across the bridge of her nose. She counted every one she could see, and with each number she heard Emmett's voice in her memory, telling her she was beautiful. When she finished, she had no idea if she had counted them right, but it did not matter. The act of counting them herself, of claiming them as part of her story, felt like reclaiming herself. "I am beautiful," she whispered to her reflection. "He taught me that, and I am not going to forget." Olivia lived another 7 years, dying peacefully in her sleep in the summer of 1911 at the age of 85. In those years, she became the heart of the family, the grandmother and great-grandmother who held everyone together. She taught her granddaughters to count their own freckles, to see them as marks of beauty instead of shame. She told them the story of the cowboy who had seen her in an alley and decided to love her. And every night before she went to sleep, she counted her freckles and remembered. Remembered the feel of Emmett's fingers on her face. Remembered his voice telling her she was remarkable. Remembered the life they had built together, against all odds, because he had chosen to see her truly. When she died, they buried her next to Emmett under a big oak tree on the ranch land. Thomas carved their headstone himself, and under their names and dates, he added one line. He counted her freckles and loved them all. The ranch stayed in the family for generations, passed down through Thomas's line. And the story of Emmett and Olivia became family legend, told and retold to every new child. The story of how love can transform shame into beauty. How one person seeing you truly can change everything. How freckles can be constellations if someone is willing to count the stars. In the end, it was not a story about freckles at all. It was a story about a woman who learned she was worthy of love, and a man who taught her by showing up every single day and choosing her again and again. It was a story about building a life together one moment at a time, one freckle at a time, one choice at a time. It was a love story, pure and simple, set against the backdrop of the Wild West. And like all the best love stories, It was both extraordinary and ordinary, both specific and universal. Because everyone, at their core, just wants to be seen truly and loved anyway. Emmett saw Olivia's freckles and counted them and loved them all. And in doing so, he gave her the greatest gift anyone can give. The knowledge that she was enough exactly as she was, that she was beautiful, that she was home,